The smile the whole world learned to trust was never just a smile. It was a light that made strangers feel safe, a kind of warmth that seemed to promise that love could still win. And for years, Julia Roberts carried that glow like armor. America's sweetheart. The woman who made fairy tales feel possible. The face on the poster, the laugh in the theater, the heart beating behind so many stories we grew up on. But now, that same smile looks heavier, like it's holding back a storm. Like it's covering something that has been breaking in silence for a long time. And suddenly, the life that once looked uncheckable is trembling right in front of us, not for attention, not for drama, but because sometimes a person can only be strong for so long before the cracks start to show. And for the first time, Julia's pain doesn't feel like gossip. It feels human. It feels real. It feels like a woman finally reaching the edge of what she can carry alone. Comment 56 or write Rip Julia Roberts to honor them. For years, she made the world believe in happy endings. She made romance look gentle. She made heartbreak look survivable. She made the camera fall in love with her the way the audience did. But somewhere behind the glow of premieres and applause, something began to slip. It didn't shatter loudly. It didn't collapse in a headline. It softened first, quietly, a distance you could sense in a photograph, a tiredness you could feel in the way she stood. The whispers didn't start as a roar. They started as a murmur, little stories people weren't sure they should repeat. But then the murmurs became patterns, and the patterns became a question nobody could ignore anymore. Comment 56 or write Rip Julia Roberts to honor them, and then there were the moments that felt too specific to dismiss. A few paparazzi shots, a laugh that didn't belong to her, a closeness that raised eyebrows. Her husband, Danny Mao, caught in the kind of frame that doesn't fade quickly from the internet. At first, Julia stayed quiet because that has always been her instinct. Protect the private world, shield the children, pretend the noise outside isn't getting in. But the longer it went on, the more the silence started to feel like grief. People close to her began to say she wasn't sleeping, that she cried more often than anyone realized, that the woman who once filled every room with sun had started dimming even at home, like she was trying to disappear inside her own life. Comment or write Rip Danny Mao to honor them. Behind closed doors, the toll wasn't just emotional. It was physical, the kind of strain that shows up in the body long before the world understands the story. Stress that turns into headaches, panic that arrives without warning, appetite that vanishes, energy that won't return. There were whispers of health scares, of weight loss, of a nervous system that had been pushed too far for too long. And even in her rare public moments, you could see it, small changes most people wouldn't notice unless they were looking closely. A pause where her spark used to be effortless. A smile that still existed but looked like it was being held up by sheer will. Comment 56 or write Rip Julia Roberts to honor them. People said she was trying to stay steady for her kids, holding the center so the family wouldn't spin apart. But even the strongest foundation can start to fracture when the weight on top becomes unbearable. And the hardest part wasn't the rumors outside. It was what seemed to be happening inside the home. The emotional space that started widening, the quiet shifts, the invisible coldness that can grow between people who once felt like everything to each other. Julia has always been fiercely protective of her children, guarding their childhood like it was sacred. But now, even that sacred place felt threatened by something she couldn't control. Comment 56 or write Rip Julia Roberts to honor them. Once, her twins were her anchor. Hazel and Phineas, the names she held close, the names she tried to keep away from the world's hunger. And Henry, her youngest, the one who arrived and gave her life a new softness. But time moves fast. Children grow. Teenage years bring their own storms. And when tension enters a household, kids feel it even when adults try to hide it. The story that surfaced wasn't about a mother who didn't love enough. It was about a mother who loved so fiercely she was terrified. Terrified of losing the closeness. Terrified of waking up one day and realizing the people she built her life around had drifted into separate worlds. Comment or write Rip Hazel to honor them. There's a special kind of heartbreak that comes when your children begin to pull away. Not because you failed, but because life is changing and you can't stop it. And when you're already carrying marriage tension, private pain, and years of pressure, that distance can feel like the final crack in the dam. The whispers said Julia took it deeply, that she tried to stay calm, tried to stay open, tried to keep listening even when she felt herself unraveling. Because she wasn't just holding a career, she was holding a home. Comment or write Rip Phineas to honor them. And then there's Henry the youngest, the one still close enough to feel like a child in a world that moves too fast. When the home atmosphere shifts, the youngest often feels it in a different way, more quietly, more tenderly. Julia, by all accounts, has always tried to be present, always tried to be the kind of mother who chooses her children over everything else. But sometimes love doesn't stop the noise. Sometimes love just makes you feel it more. Comment or write Rip Henry to honor them. And just when it seemed like she was fighting to hold on to the present, the past reached up and grabbed her by the throat. Not with scandal, not with malice, but with a revelation that shook the roots beneath her feet. It began with a name she never expected to hear connected to her. A name that didn't feel like hers until suddenly it did. Julia Mitchell. A quiet phrase that sounded almost unreal, like someone had rewritten the beginning of her story without warning. Comment or write Rip Julia Mitchell to honor them. It happened in a place designed for discovery. A set built for family history, for answers, for the kind of truths most people never get to see laid out in front of them. On finding your roots, Julia agreed to trace her ancestry. She likely expected surprises many people do, but she didn't expect to be told that the last name she carried so publicly, so proudly, wasn't tied to her the way she believed. That her family tree had a branch she never knew existed. That the story she'd lived with all her life had a hidden page. Comment 56 or write Rip Julia Roberts to honor them. The results pointed towards someone else. A man named Henry Mitchell. A name that arrived not like gossip, but like a fact that couldn't be ignored. The kind of fact that makes you blink a little slower. The kind that makes you feel like the ground is moving, even though you're standing still. It wasn't the type of revelation meant to shame anyone. It wasn't about dirt. It was about identity. About understanding who you are when the thing you thought was permanent suddenly shifts. Comment or write Rip Henry Mitchell to honor them. All her life, Roberts had been more than a surname. It had been part of her legend, part of her public face, part of the family she carried into every room she entered. But suddenly, even that felt uncertain. And in that moment, she didn't collapse. She didn't explode. She didn't perform. She listened. She processed it in real time, eyes wide, breath steady, trying to hold the truth gently instead of letting it bruise her. It was one of those moments where you realize strength isn't loud. Sometimes strength is just staying present while your whole self is being rearranged. Comment 56 or write Rip Julia Roberts to honor them. The story behind it reached back to her great-grandmother. A relationship after a husband's death, not a disgrace, not a scandal. Just humanity. Just life doing what life does, messy, complicated, impossible to fit into neat boxes. But even when something isn't shameful, it can still be disorienting because your name is your mirror. And when the mirror changes, you stare at yourself differently. Julia held it with grace, but grace doesn't erase impact. It only keeps you standing while you feel it. Comment 56 or write Rip Julia Roberts to honor them. And as the dust of that revelation settled, another buried ache began to rise, not from the cameras, not from the headlines, but from the quiet place inside her where childhood memories still lived. The kind of pain that doesn't vanish just because you grow up. The kind of pain that doesn't care how famous you become. The kind of pain that waits patiently and then returns when you're already tired. It brought her back to a home that didn't always feel safe. A home where love could feel conditional and tension could feel like weather unavoidable, heavy, always in the air. Comment 56 or Right Rip Julia Roberts to honor them. Her mother, Betty Lou, remarried a man named Michael Mose. From the outside, it could have looked ordinary. A new husband, a new structure, a blended family trying to become whole. But inside, the story was different. Inside, Julia lived with fear. Not the kind that screams for attention, but the kind that teaches a child to stay small, to stay quiet, to read the room before speaking, to retreat into imagination just to survive the day. Comment or Right Rip Betty Lou to honor them. Michael Mose wasn't remembered with warmth. He was described as cold, controlling, cruel, the type of presence that can make a house feel like it's holding its breath. And Julia didn't speak much about it. But sometimes the silence says everything. Sometimes the parts a person refuses to revisit are the parts that hurt the most. The ones that shape them before they even understood what shaping was. Comment or Right Rip Michael Mose to honor them. Her older brother, Eric Roberts, spoke on it with harsh clarity. Words that painted a picture of a man who brought violence into their orbit. And when someone you love confirms what you've tried to bury, it doesn't free you. It reopens you. It reminds you that what happened was real. That it wasn't just a phase. That it wasn't just discipline. It was fear carried by a child who had no power to stop it. Comment or Ray Bearbergs to honor them. Even her mother admitted regret. The kind of regret that doesn't fix anything but still reveals a truth. That the choice haunted her. That she knew. That she wished she could undo it. But childhood doesn't rewind. It just stretches forward into adulthood, hiding inside the way you love, the way you trust, the way you brace for abandonment even when nobody is leaving. And for Julia, those early years didn't vanish when success arrived. They simply went quiet, waiting behind the smile. Comment 56 or Right Rip Julia Roberts to honor them. Asterisk, asterisk. She learned to escape the only way a child can when the walls feel too close. She disappeared into stories, into pages, into films, into anything that could lift her out of the tension and place her somewhere safer, even if only in her mind. That's how survival often begins, not with strength, but with imagination. And even when she grew into the woman the world would celebrate, those early lessons stayed stitched into her. The instinct to endure, to keep things private, to smile even when the inside of you is shaking. Because when you grow up in a house where safety has to be earned, you don't forget how to keep yourself together. Comment 56 or Right Rip Julia Roberts to honor them. People assume fame is a cure. Like money and applause erase bruises you can't see. But pain doesn't care about status. It doesn't get impressed by trophies. It doesn't disappear because strangers love you. It follows you quietly, shaping the way you move through relationships, shaping how you trust, shaping how you protect what you love. And in Julia's case, those old scars became part of how she built her adulthood. It shaped her guardedness, her privacy, the way she held her family close like a fortress. Because when you once felt unprotected, you spend the rest of your life trying to make sure nobody you love ever feels that same fear. Comment 56 or Right Rip Julia Roberts to honor them. But even in darkness, there was once a light. One person who felt like safety. One person who gave her a different kind of world, gentler, kinder, warmer. A man she lost far too soon. And even now, Even after everything she's lived through, his absence still echoes. Before the Hollywood carpets, before the cameras, before the fame turned her name into a brand, there was her father, Walter Grady Roberts. Comment or write Rip Walter Grady Roberts to honor them. Walter wasn't the kind of man who ruled with fear. He was creative, soft in the ways that mattered, a playwright, an actor, the kind of soul who believed in imagination and kindness, not control. To Julia, he wasn't just her dad, he was her first refuge, her first proof that life could be gentle, that a home could hold laughter, that love could be safe. She adored him, and in that love, she found something every child deserves, a place to breathe. Comment or write Rip Walter Grady Roberts to honor them. But childhood doesn't always let you keep what you love. The world can be brutal in its timing. Walter died of throat cancer when Julia was only 10 years old. 10. Still young enough to believe your parents are permanent. Still young enough to think you have time. And when he left, something inside her dimmed. Not because she stopped being joyful, but because she learned a truth that never really leaves you once you learn it. People can disappear, and you don't get to choose when. Comment 56 or write Rip Julia Roberts to honor them. She carried that loss quietly, the way she carries so many things, with grace on the outside, with weight on the inside. She once reflected that she lost him before she truly got to know him. And there's a special kind of grief in that missing someone, not only for who they were, but for everything they could have been in your life if time had been kinder. A hole that doesn't fill, no matter how bright your career becomes, no matter how loud the world claps, no matter how many movie premieres you attend, because some losses don't get replaced. They just get carried. Comment 56 or write Rip Julia Roberts to honor them. And then there's the story people don't expect when they think of Julia's beginnings. A poetic thread tied to history itself. When Julia was born, her family couldn't afford the hospital bill, the kind of problem that can change a life before it even really begins. But in an act of quiet generosity, the bill was covered by the King family. Not a random kindness. The King family. Martin Luther King Jr. and Coretta Scott King stepped in without noise, without headlines, without needing credit. Comment or write Rip Martin Luther King Jr. to honor them. Coretta Scott King, standing beside that legacy, was part of that kindness too, an act of care that didn't need a spotlight to matter. Julia's parents had once run a small theater school in Atlanta, and the Kings appreciated their humanity enough to return it at the exact moment it was needed most. No fanfare, just compassion, just love moving through the world the way it should. And even years later, even with all her fame, Julia never forgot what that kind of generosity feels like. Because when hope arrives at your lowest point, it becomes a permanent mark on your heart. Comment or write or IP Coretta Scott King to honor them. Her father's death and that unexpected support shaped her in ways the public never fully saw. It taught her that life can take, but it can also give. That kindness can show up in places you never expect. That the world is complicated, but still capable of grace. And Julia carried that forward, not as a headline, but as a quiet truth inside her. Comment 56 or write Rip Julia Roberts to honor them. But the world didn't always repay her with kindness. Before it called her iconic, it criticized her. Before it praised her smile, it mocked it. That grin the world now recognizes instantly, the wide, bright, fearless smile was once a source of pain. In school, classmates didn't call it beautiful. They called it too much. They laughed. They teased. They made her feel like her face was something she needed to hide. And there's nothing small about what that does to a person, especially when you're young. Especially when you're still trying to figure out who you are. Comment 56 or write Rip Julia Roberts to honor them. She admitted that people made fun of her mouth all the time. That she hated her smile back then. And those words land differently when you think about what that smile later became. Because it wasn't just a feature, it became her signature, her weapon, her warmth. Proof that the thing people target in you can become the very thing that saves you. She didn't shrink away from it forever. She leaned in. She turned insecurity into identity. And that's not something the world handed her. That's something she fought for in herself. Comment 56 or write Rip Julia Roberts to honor them. Later, she became someone who could speak against cruelty without needing to shout. She became an advocate against bullying, standing for kids who felt the same sting she once felt. Because when you remember what it's like to be laughed at for simply existing, you don't forget the shape of that wound. And you don't forget how powerful it is to help someone else carry theirs. Her smile didn't become famous because it was perfect. It became famous because it was real. It was fearless. It was hers. Comment 56 or write Rip Julia Roberts to honor them. Asterisk, asterisk, and with that authenticity, she began her climb. Not as some overnight miracle, not as a princess delivered into Hollywood by fate, but as a young woman chasing a dream that didn't come with guarantees. Julia Roberts wasn't born under spotlights. She was born in Smyrna, Georgia quiet streets, ordinary beginnings, a life far away from movie premieres and magazine covers. And when she was 18, she left. Not because she had a perfect plan, but because she had hope. Hope that somewhere bigger than her hometown, there was room for her story to grow. Comment 56 or write Rip Julia Roberts to honor them. New York City wasn't gentle. It wasn't glamorous. It didn't roll out a carpet for her dreams. She lived on friends' couches, took whatever work she could find, signed with a modeling agency not because she wanted to live on runways, but because she needed a way in. She needed exposure. She needed a door to open. And for a long time, she was invisible to the world. A face in the background. A name nobody knew. But Julia didn't confuse silence with failure. She kept going. She stayed patient. She waited for her chance like someone who truly believed it was coming. Comment 56 or write Rip Julia Roberts to honor them. There was a critic who saw the spark early, the one who understood she wasn't just another pretty face drifting through a scene. Roger Ebert watched her and recognized what so many would later feel, that she made you care, that she pulled you in without forcing it, that there was something magnetic in her presence, something that felt honest. And that was the beginning. Not an instant explosion, a spark. The kind of spark that spreads quietly until one day it's everywhere. Comment or write Rip Roger Ebert to honor them. Julia's rise wasn't an accident. It wasn't a lottery win. It was persistence. It was showing up again and again, even when nobody was watching. It was carrying her own heart through hard rooms and letting the world see something real in her. And just as that spark began to grow, the role that would change her life forever arrived like destiny dressed in red. Pretty Woman, a film that would shift her from rising star to cultural landmark. Comment 56 or write Rip Julia Roberts to honor them. In 1990, she stepped into a story that was never supposed to be a glowing fairy tale. The original script was darker, heavier, more brutal. A story shaped by exploitation and survival. But then Julia appeared on screen, and the energy changed. Producers saw something they couldn't ignore. They saw that with her, the story didn't have to be tragedy. It could be hope. It could be charm. It could be magic. And with Richard Gere beside her, she brought warmth and light into Vivian, word in a way that made the character unforgettable. Comment or write Rip Richard Gere to honor them. Their chemistry felt like lightning rare, impossible to manufacture, the kind that makes a movie become a moment in history. She auditioned twice, pushing through the uncertainty, pushing through the doubt. And director Gary Marshall fought to keep her because he saw what others hadn't fully understood yet. He saw a vulnerability wrapped in joy, a softness that didn't make her weak, a strength that didn't need to be harsh. He believed in her, and that belief helped change everything. Comment or write ripped Gary Marshall to honor them, and then came that famous necklace box moment. Not scripted, not planned. A second of improvisation. Richard snapped it shut. Julia reacted with a laugh that felt pure and unfiltered. And suddenly the world had a scene it would never forget. A tiny burst of genuine joy trapped on film forever. That one moment became a symbol of what made her different. She didn't just act. She lived in the moment. She let the audience feel her. Comment 56 or write rip Julia Roberts to honor Pretty Woman. Made her America's sweetheart overnight. Covers, cameras, red carpets. A whirlwind of attention that doesn't slow down just because you need air. But people didn't fall in love with her because she was polished. They fell in love with her because she felt human. Because she could laugh with her whole face, cry without vanity, glow without pretending she didn't have shadows. She looked like someone you could actually know. And that is why the world held on to her so tightly. Comment 56 or write rip Julia Roberts to honor them. But fame has a price, and the bill always comes due. Behind the success, her personal life began to spiral. And the first public storm would remind everyone that fairy tales don't always follow the script. In the early 90s, Julia Roberts was everywhere. And then her love life caught fire. She was engaged to actor Kiefer Sutherland. The wedding was planned. Invitations were out. The world was ready to watch the sweetheart step into her own romantic ending. Comment or write rip Kiefer Sutherland to honor them. And then days before the ceremony ended. No long explanation. No public speech. Just a sudden disappearance that left everyone stunned. The silence made the headlines louder. And then came the shock that cracked open the entire story. Julia had flown to Ireland with Kiefer's best friend, Jason Patrick. The media didn't just report it. They devoured it. They turned her into a villain overnight. The same world that adored her smile now punished her for being human. Comment or write rip Jason Patrick to honor them. The tabloids called her a runaway bride. They fed on the scandal like it was entertainment. And Julia didn't defend herself in public. She didn't beg for understanding. She simply vanished from view and let the noise rage without her. And when she returned, she did it with another surprise marrying musician Lyle Lovett in a quiet ceremony that left people speechless. No build-up. No performance. Just a decision made far away from the spotlight. It didn't last, ending 2 years later, but the heartbreak wasn't in the headlines. It was in the quiet. In the way she kept her heart guarded, even as the world demanded access. Comment or write rip Lyle. Love it to honor them. Asterisk, asterisk. She once said it felt like she lived 2 lives, one the world could see, and one only she could feel. And that's the curse of being adored in public while falling apart in private. Everyone wanted the romantic story. Everyone wanted the perfect image. But no one stopped long enough to wonder what it does to a person to have their heart turned into a spectacle. Julia didn't just endure heartbreak. She endured it under a microscope. And with every public relationship that cracked, the walls around her grew higher. The smile stayed, but the guard around her soul became harder to reach. Comment 56 or write rip Julia Roberts to honor them. Years passed. The storm of that early scandal faded into Hollywood mythology, but Julia's life didn't magically settle into peace. Because sometimes, even when the cameras move on, the consequences stay. And then she met someone new, someone who didn't arrive like a headline at first, but like a shift in gravity. It happened on a film set in the middle of work, where people go to pretend to be someone else. But for Julia, it became real. She met cinematographer Daniel Moder while working on The Mexican. And what began there didn't just change her love life. It lit a fire that would follow her for years. Comment or write Rip Daniel Moder to honor them. The problem was simple, and it was complicated. Daniel Moder was married. And when two lives collide in that kind of way, the story doesn't stay private for long. Julia fell hard, and he did too. But love doesn't erase the mess it creates when it starts in the middle of someone else's marriage. His wife at the time, Vera Steinberg, wasn't letting go quietly. And you can't blame someone for fighting for what they believed was theirs. The tension dragged on, and the tabloids stayed hungry. They circled like wolves, waiting for one moment, one mistake, to turn into a permanent label. Comment or write Rip Vera Steinberg to honor them, and then Julia made the move that would define the narrative for years. She was photographed wearing a homemade t-shirt that read, "Aloe Vera," a jab, a taunt, a single line that the press treated like a verdict. The world that once called her adorable suddenly called her cruel. Suddenly, the America's sweetheart image cracked. People stopped seeing her complexity and started seeing her as a headline. Julia, as always, didn't stand at a podium to explain herself. She didn't spill her heart to strangers. She swallowed the backlash and kept walking, but it stuck. And even now, the shadow of that moment still hangs in the story people tell about her. Comment 56 or write Rip Julia Roberts to honor them. Then came the marriage. Quiet, sudden, almost defiant in its privacy. Julia and Daniel Moder married on July 4th, 2002, a ranch wedding. Small, hidden from the noise. No flashing cameras, no glossy magazine exclusives, just vows made in a space that felt like theirs. The storm didn't instantly stop, but time did what time always does. It moved forward. And somehow, against the odds and the judgment, they stayed together for 2 decades. They built a home. They raised 3 children. They tried to keep their life off-grid, out of reach, protected from the public appetite that had already taken so much. Comment or write Rip Daniel Moder to honor them, but even long marriages can be complicated. Love can be true and still be tested. Love can survive and still carry scars. People whispered that the relationship wasn't always easy, that it was shaped by distance, by fame, by the ghosts of how it began. Insiders said he was her anchor. But even anchors can drift when the currents get strong enough. And now, with rumors rising again of distance and tension, people wonder if this love, once framed as her final safe place, is facing its hardest chapter yet. Comment 56 or write Rip Julia Roberts to honor them. Still, long before controversies and headlines, Julia had already proven something that couldn't be taken from her. She wasn't just a face people admired. She was a force people couldn't deny. Because when the world tried to box her into one shape, romantic, charming, beautiful, she broke the box and stepped into something sharper. Something heavier. Something that demanded respect. And the role that did it wasn't gentle. It was fearless. It was raw. Erin Brockovich. Comment or write RIP Erin Brockovich to honor them.